Hello, friends! Our world is full of mysteries that no one can answer. Among them are many which, due to the development of technology, humanity has not yet been able to solve. But at the same time, there are also those that are created by people themselves, and that often puzzle you. And once you find out the truth, it may shock you. Just such a mysterious story happened to the hero, a man named Alex Cooper, who seemed to have it all. But in his old age, his life was shattered as the past caught up with him. Before we start, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so we take you back to Alex Cooper, a man who, at 65 years old, seemed to have achieved so much. Alex's childhood was spent in an orphanage, but that fact didn't stop him from living his life with dignity and becoming a respected man in Cranbrook, British Columbia, Canada. During these years, he had a beloved wife, 5 grown children, and 8 grandchildren. All his life he has tried to prove to the world that he deserves better, and he succeeded. He had a large home, a loving family, and devoted friends. Not many people can say that, but in the blink of an eye, he didn't have it all. Alex ran a successful cleaning business for over 20 years, and in 1986, he decided to do something new for himself. He bought a small lorry and began delivering groceries. At the same time, the work was uncomplicated, and the income was not only enough to feed his family, but even to set aside money for holidays. As the years passed, it was time for Alex Cooper to retire. His beloved wife was looking forward to the time when they would finally have some free time, as they say, to live for themselves. But no one could even imagine at the time what lay ahead of them. On April 4, 1987, Alex's adult daughter Leila and her husband go shopping in a neighboring town. But before they reach the supermarket, they see Alex's car parked on the side of the bridge. The car was parked with its engine switched off and closed. All this said only one thing: its owner was somewhere nearby. When we got closer to the car, we saw that Dad wasn't there. I then thought he was just fishing and went down to the riverbank, but to our surprise, he was not there either, the man's daughter recalled. The girl started to get worried because it seemed a bit strange, so she called her mother, Margaret, to find out what was going on, and what she heard soon made her nervous. She had been up all night calling her friends, but none of them had seen Alex or knew his whereabouts. The family had no choice but to call the police and report the disappearance of their father and husband. Already half an hour late, the police arrived at the location of the car, and a swift search for the missing man began on the same day, and it wasn't long before the police had their first clue. After learning from Margaret of her husband's rather odd habits, always carrying a large sum of money, and that he had never hid it in his wallet. The first thing that came to mind for the investigation was that Alex had been attacked for the purpose of robbery. But at the same time, Alex's daughter suggested that her father felt sick at the riverbank. Perhaps he went down to look at the river without taking his fishing rod with him, and later slipped or simply fainted, after which he fell into the river and drowned. The river current was very strong, so the body could have been carried several kilometers away. But these were only guesses. There was no real evidence. The very next day, the police had filed a report about Alex's disappearance in the hope of getting some more information, and thus involving the public. This later worked. Soon calls started pouring in from concerned drivers who thought they had seen a similar man on the road that day near Cranbrook. According to them, he was hitching a ride. The authorities suggested that Alex might have left of his own free will. As for the family members, they all agree it wasn't him. They could not accept the possibility that Alex had faked his disappearance, as the man could not have acted so irresponsibly to them and just left without saying anything. And there were no preconditions either. He was a very successful and happy man. He would soon be retiring, and his whole life was going well. He certainly had nothing to run away from, but measures taken. A whole year has passed since my beloved husband disappeared. Even though the search continued, it yielded no results. In 1988, I had to officially declare him dead, Margaret told sadly. One ordinary day, a woman lost all sense of her life and the man she loved. But that wasn't all. The fact was that the first information about a man with that name did not appear until 1952, and that was the year Margaret and Alex were married. It turned out that her husband simply didn't exist until then, at least not according to the papers. But how could that be? It turned out the man I had lived with within 34 years, whom we thought we knew so well, had a lot to hide, but even that didn't answer the question of where Alex had gone and what had happened that day. For the next 4 years, the Cooper family did not live. They existed in a state of constant uncertainty. Most likely it would have remained that way, and the mystery would have remained unsolved to this day. But on 27 May 1991, a full 5 years after the man's mysterious disappearance, the right information finally emerged. What new facts had emerged in Alex's case? And indeed, was he alive? In order to give answers to these questions, we will take you to a distance of 350 kilometers from Cranbrook, where the Toronto police received a missing person report on May 27, 1991. David Cooper, the man, lived alone, and an attentive neighbor noticed that David had been missing for several days, at which point he called the police. The patrol arrived on the call, and with the help of the landlord who was renting to David, opened the flat and began to look around. There was a picture of David on the table, which the police took with them to the police station to file a missing persons report. As many had already realized, there was an unbelievable surprise waiting for everyone. What a surprise to the Toronto police when they found a similar man in the database who had been wanted a few years earlier in another part of the mainland. In this photo, David was standing with a newborn baby in his arms and showing the photo to Margaret. She tearfully confirmed that it was her husband, Alex, and he was holding their grandson in his arms. The photo was taken in a year before his mysterious disappearance. Looking in the face of this happy man, it was hard to imagine what had made this man hide from the world. It is now clear to everyone that David Cooper is the same Alex Cooper who disappeared without a trace 5 years ago under bizarre circumstances. But there were still no answers as to what had happened then and now. After all, both Alex and David were listed as missing. As it turned out, the most interesting thing was waiting for everyone. 2 days later, on May 29, 191, David, aka Alex, quietly and not guessing anything, comes back to Toronto, and entering his flat, he saw that somebody was in his apartment.